This is Dr. Aditya C.B. Chakravarti from Dr. Talks. Today, we will be dealing with mucormycosis, the most famous black fungus which has been prevalent for the past few days in India. That is what we are going to deal with today. So, first we will see about the organism, mucormycosis. This mucormycosis encompasses a group of infection caused by a wide variety of fungus. They belong to the order Mucorales and they belong to the subphylum Mucormycotina and family Mucorrhozae. There are 9 subfamilies causing mucormycosis and the most important one will be the Mucorrhozae. And among the Mucorrhozae, the most important species will be the Rhizopus oryzae and Rhizopus delamer and A. elegans. These are the common organisms that are causing mucormycosis, especially in India. Now, who are the patients who are more prone to develop mucormycosis? As we all know, the diabetes mellitus, who are poorly controlled diabetes mellitus, is one of the most important risk factor for developing mucormycosis. Apart from diabetes mellitus, what are the other conditions which can cause mucormycosis? They include the organ transplant recipient who are immunosuppressed with steroids or other immunosuppressive drugs, or patients post hematopoietic stem cell transplantation, patients who are malignancy patients, and neutropenic patients. The patients who have defective phagocytosis because of administration of increased amount of steroids or because of the neutropenia, they also have high chance of developing mucormycosis. The other risk factors include diabetic ketoacidosis. This diabetic ketoacidosis particularly increases the incidence of rhinocerebral mucormycosis. So why diabetic ketoacidosis per se has higher incidence of mucormycosis? 2 factors. First, this acidosis. This acidosis can cause the release of free iron from increase the release of free iron from the bone forms. And secondly, the beta hydroxybutyrate will try to increase the number of fungal receptors in the body. And both this condition, because the iron, the tissue iron, this iron will help in the fungal multiplication. That is why previously in renal failure patients who are managed with desferoxamine, they had higher prevalence of mucormycosis. Why was this high prevalence of mucormycosis? Was that this administered desferoxamine it acted as a siderophore and channeled all the iron into the fungus for the fungal growth. Iron basically favors fungal multiplication, especially mucors multiplication. So diabetic ketoacidosis increases the risk of rhinocerebral mucormycosis. What other agents? This is very important. Antifungal prophylaxis. There are high chance reported cases of antifungal prophylaxis with itraconazole or fluconazole patients. These patients who took antifungal prophylaxis had higher chances of mucormycosis. Not only mucormycosis, they had higher chance of disseminated mucormycosis. So prophylactically administering fluconazole or itraconazole for mucor patients can be devastating and it should not be done. This is a take-home point. And all of the traumatic inoculations, the patients can also receive this mucormycosis as a result of trauma mainly from the road traffic accidents or the soldiers during wartime injuries or patients with thorn prick. All these patients can have higher chance of skin problems of mucormycosis. Then hyperglycemia. Hyperglycemia will have got certain molecular pathogenesis, namely it will increase the GRP78, this proteins will be increased and it will increase the COTH proteins. What does this protein do? This will increase the blood iron level. By increasing the blood iron level, it favors the proliferation of fungus and also it increases the fungal receptors. And the other problems will be the poor phagocytosis as a result of hyperglycemia and increase in hyperglycosylated iron proteins. They can also worsen the mucormycosis. Now, we will start with the COVID patients. Why did COVID patients have got higher incidence of mucormycosis? The COVID patients who are on mechanical ventilator or COVID patients who are on long-term oxygen therapy, they were continuous oxygen requirement patients and patients who have been administered high-dose steroids, high-dose methylprednisolone, pulse methylprednisolone or other immunomodulators like bevacizumab and these other immunosuppressants can have high incidence of mucormycosis. The rhinocerebral mucormycosis. This rhinocerebral mucormycosis was the one that is more common in DKA patient and that is the one that is more common in the COVID patients. How do they present? This rhinocerebral mucormycosis, patient will present initially with eye pain or facial pain or facial numbness. There can be conjunctival congestion or decrease in vision. This will be the initial complaints. As the infection spreads from the ethmoid sinus into the orbital cavity, this can lead to the periorbital muscles. All the orbital muscles will be damaged, the orbital cavity will be occupied. This will result in proptosis. From the orbital cavity, it can spread either via the blood route or via the contiguity. It can involve the frontal lobe of the brain, or it can involve the cavernous sinus. A cavernous sinus thrombosis can present as bilateral involvement. The bilateral involvement with patient can have proptosis, the patient can have ophthalmoplegia, he will not be able to look his eyes in either direction, that will be difficult, and the patient will have severe eye pain and conjunctival chemosis. So it is mandatory then any patient who is a COVID positive patient on steroid treatment, and if the patient is developing signs of sinusitis, you have to examine the patient, his cornea. In this pupil reflex should be done daily. The ophthalmoplegia should be examined daily. You should examine for the throat, his throat, for any eschars or the skin eschars. If anything is present, that should be taken seriously, and conjunctival congestion if present, that should also be taken significantly. Majority of the cases are because of bacterial pneumonia, but still bacterial streptococcus, you have to think of COVID in mucormycosis in this COVID pandemic. So visual inspection in the early stages it will be normal, then it will go for an erythematous stage, then the patient develop classical eschar lesion. Again, hot palate can also be examined. A hot palate can also be involved. So daily examination of the pupils for eye movement, hot palate is mandatory if the patient shows signs of sinusitis. So pulmonary involvement. Pulmonary involvement is the second most common involvement of mucormycosis. Pulmonary involvement can be seen in especially organ transplant recipient. This pulmonary involvement in the form of patient can present with fever, cough, breathlessness, hemoptysis. There will be angio invasion. Because of the angio invasion, they can go for necrosis and cavity and hemoptysis presentation. So chest X-ray can show either a consolidation finding, or it can have nodular features, or it can have cavity or a wedge-shaped infarct. Anything can be found in chest X-ray. HRCT is very useful for differentiating a mucormycosis from an aspergillus pneumonia. It is important to differentiate these two conditions because the voriconazole, which is used in the treatment of mucormycosis in aspergillus, is not effective in patients with mucormycosis. So, what are the evidence? CT evidence: the patient can have more than 10 pulmonary nodules. The patient can have sinusitis with pleural effusion. When all these three findings are present, you can think more in terms of mucormycosis. So what are the cutaneous risk factors? As I said earlier, road traffic accidents, because of a patient with wartime injury or a thorn prick, or people having contaminated use of the catheters, the IV injection, contaminated IV injections or subcutaneous injections, all these things can lead to cutaneous mucormycosis. So how do they present? It is a very rapid presentation. From the skin, they very quickly involve the subcutaneous tissue, bones, muscles. They can involve very rapidly, and they carry very poor prognosis if they have got systemic spread. If you pick the disease early with only skin involvement, you can go for debridement, and that carries a better prognosis. So GI involvement. GIT involvement is usually seen in preterm children with necrotis enterocolitis. It can also be seen in adults with diabetes or immunocompromised patients. It can present in the form of abdominal pain, nausea, vomiting, or endoscopy can show a polypoidal mass. They can go for rupture, and they can go for hemorrhage problems. So disseminated mucor. This is the most dangerous form of mucor. From any primary set of infection which we dealt earlier, the mucor can go for a systemic spread, and the systemic spread predominantly involves the brain, and more than 90% mortality rate is present for this disseminated mucormycosis. So how do you diagnose an infection of mucormycosis? Definitive diagnosis involves two things. First, you should isolate the organism from a pure fluid, a pure sterile fluid from which you should isolate the organism, by means of an FNAC or a biopsy or a pleural tapping. That should show the organism. One. Secondly, there should be histopathological evidence of angio invasion. Vascular invasion should be made out with histopathologically. These two only can definitely diagnose mucormycosis. However, probable diagnosis can be done if the patient has got a typical feature, say COVID positive patient, the patient is on steroids, patient developing sinusitis, CT shows evidence of sinus involvement with lung involvement. In such cases, you have to empirically take this probable diagnosis into account. This involves two parts. First, isolation of the organism from non-sterile fluid, say bronchoscopy or a bronchoalveolar lavage or a sputum sample or a deep nasal swab KH mount, that should be positive. Along with that, you can histopathological evidence of the mucor without any angio invasion. That amounts to probable diagnosis. So how do the histopathological diagnosis? Histopathological examination with H&E staining is the most sensitive method for diagnosing mucormycosis. It shows the following characteristics. It is ribbon shaped, it is thick walled, it is wide and it is non-septate and branches at right angle. Non-septate, branching at right angle, thick walled, wide molds is the diagnostic feature of this mucormycosis. You can also do CT or MRI in patients with when you find sinusitis. This CT, however, can show only the finding of sinusitis. This bacterial sinusitis and mucor sinusitis, this cannot be differentiated much based on CT alone. Even the bone involvement will not be much in mucormycosis in early stages. If you suspect brain involvement or ophthalmic involvement, you can go for MRI, which will be better than CT in these cases. So, what are the differential diagnoses? Sinusitis, you should again think of bacterial sinusitis because of Staph aureus or Streptococcus or gram-negative organism. They should be the first differential diagnosis. They can also present with sinusitis, proptosis, patient with orbital cellulitis. This presentation is common in those conditions, and Tolosa-Hunt syndrome can also be thought as differential diagnosis. One catch point is that Tolosa-Hunt syndrome won't be progressive. Mucormycosis will be very progressive. How do you treat? The three important steps in treating mucormycosis is that early initiation of antifungal treatment. That is the most important thing. The important antifungal will be the polyene antifungals. Secondly, you should reverse the modifiable risk factors. Say you should reduce the dose of steroids, you should reduce the dose of immunosuppressive drugs. If possible, you can stop the steroid medications, and you have to maintain euglycemia with the help of sugars, better diabetic control. You can use bolus insulins regularly to maintain the target blood sugar. That is the most effective preventive measure. And again, you can maintain a normal acid-base status. This is because, as we mentioned earlier, acidosis can promote iron tissue, increase the serum iron, that can promote the proliferation of fungus. So that should also be protected. Then, when do you initiate treatment? Even a clinical suspicion of sinusitis with in the COVID-19 patient or a high-risk patient, if there is clinical suspicion of mucormycosis, that is alone enough to start the polyene antibiotics, because just 1 or 2 doses of polyene antibiotics won't have much side effects. So it is better to over-treat the patient with polyene antibiotic if there is some clinical suspicion. So when will you go for debridement? Debridement is debridement will actually improve the treatment outcome very effectively. This is because because of the angio invasion, there will be tissue necrosis and there will be thrombus formation. So whatever antifungal we pump, it will not reach the site of infection. So debridement is the primary most effective treatment. If it is possible, it has to be done. If possible, you have to go for a frozen section to identify the clearance. That can also be done. So what is the role of sodium bicarbonate? As we said, acidosis is pathogenic. Mouse studies have shown sodium bicarbonate in a DKA treatment has improved the mucormycosis outcome, but it has not been proven in human studies. Secondly, the blood transfusion. Again, blood transfusion can lead to increased release of free iron that can worsen the underlying mucormycosis. So, as far as possible, you can avoid blood transfusion when you suspect mucormycosis. Iron supplementation should be avoided in mucormycosis, plain simple. So, coming to the treatment regimen, amphotericin B. What is this? There are 3 formulations of this amphotericin B, namely liposomal amphotericin B, amphotericin B deoxycholate, and amphotericin B lipid complex. The best one will be the liposomal amphotericin B, because liposomal amphotericin B has got less systemic toxicity and it has got a better CNS penetration, so that is more commonly performed. liposomal amphotericin B is given in a dose of 5 milligram per kilogram per day. That is the dose for liposomal amphotericin B. You can increase the liposomal amphotericin B dose to maximum 10 milligram per kilogram per day, but beyond that it won't be much effective. It is usually given as the first line treatment of choice for mucormycosis and should be started as soon as you clinically suspect the patient to have mucor. Some trials has shown that combination of liposomal amphotericin B with caspofungin and echinocandins is found to be more beneficial than treatment with amphotericin B alone. However, much trial needs to be done to confirm this data. As far as now, we start treatment only with liposomal amphotericin B. That is the first line treatment of choice. Start at 5 mg per kg per day, improved to 10 mg per kg per day if there is no improvement, with careful monitoring of the electrolytes, renal functions, because amphotericin B is notorious to cause acute kidney injury. Then the azoles. Only two azoles, namely the posaconazole and isavuconazole, these two drugs are only approved for treatment of mucormycosis. Both of them are of equal efficacy. Posaconazole is the most preferred drug. It is usually given at a dose of 300 mg BD first dose, then 300 mg OD. The second dose will be just 300 mg OD will be given. So what is the duration of treatment? There is no fixed duration. The treatment can go for weeks or months. Until the patient go for clinical resolution of signs and symptoms. Until then, you have to treat the patient with this combination, liposomal amphotericin B and posaconazole. This should be given until the patient resolves. But the dosage can be reduced from thrice weekly to twice weekly. That you can reduce, but the duration should be until clinical resolution. So, what are the combination therapy? 3 different combination therapies are available. Combining polyene antibiotic with an echinocandin, polyene with the fluconazoles, or polyene with the azoles, or polyene plus echinocandin plus azole. That is the triple therapy. However, these are all experimental. When nothing works, you can go for this 3 drug regimen. But however, it is preferable to start with liposomal amphotericin B and then shift over to posaconazole. So, how do you prevent this mucormycosis? This is the most important thing. So, prevention, the humidifier, that which you have oxygen, that humidifier, that fluid in the humidifier should be a sterile fluid, preferably distilled water. You should not use tap water or mineral water for that purpose. And it should be frequently cleaned, daily cleaned and daily replaced, and the amount filled should be less than the maximum level, at least 1 centimeter below the maximum water level that should be filled. And also, you should frequently clean with soap bubbles, with soap and detergents, and weekly once at least you have to go for antiseptic cleaning. This is very important. And secondly, any patient, COVID patient with evidence of sinusitis, you have to examine daily his eye movements, for his pupil size. You have to check for hot palate, for any Eshkas. They should be monitored closely, and even if there is a minimal suspicion, go for CT and go for aggressive treatment with amphotericin B. So diabetes control, this is the most important point in preventing this mucormycosis. As far as possible, reduce the dose of steroids in patients, and better diabetic control, preferably with insulin, with close monitoring should be done. Only a better DM control can improve the outcome in mucormycosis. So this sums up my discussion on mucormycosis. I hope you liked the discussion. I would like you to share your thoughts about the discussion in the comment section. Subscribe to my channel, share it with your friends. This could be very useful, especially in this COVID pandemic time, to all your friends. So that's it. Thank you.